All right, ready to dive into a topic that maybe feels a little awkward,
Oh, yeah,
but can actually be a game changer for your relationships.
absolutely.
We're talking emotional triggers.
You know, it's funny. It's something that's so common, but often so misunderstood. You
Yeah.
know, think of emotional triggers as those moments
Right.
where something seemingly small happens, but you have a huge overreaction.
Yeah, totally out of proportion, right.
Exactly. And the reason those reactions
Hmm.
can feel so intense and unexpected
Right.
is that they're often rooted in past experiences.
Oh, interesting.
It's not really about what's happening right now,
Mm.
but more about how that moment connects to,
Right.
old hurts or fears from the past.
So it's almost like those moments are
Yeah.
touching on something much deeper
Yes.
that we might not even be aware of.
Precisely.
Wow.
And one of the psychologists we're looking at today
Okay.
really emphasizes that link between our past and our current reactions. They point out that these triggers often stem from
Yeah.
unresolved issues, things we haven't fully
Okay.
processed or healed from.
So if those triggers
Yeah.
are rooted in past experiences,
Mm-hmm.
where do we even begin to uncover them?
Hmm.
I mean, it's not like we're walking around with this
Right.
mental map of all our baggage, right?
That's where the detective work comes in.
Okay, I like that.
The first step is
Mm-hmm.
really cultivating a sense of self-awareness.
Okay.
Start paying close attention to those moments
Mm-hmm.
when your reaction feels out of sync
Okay.
with the situation,
Mhm.
and ask yourself, what's really going on here?
Mm-hmm.
What deeper hurt or fear might this be
Okay.
echoing?
So it's almost like tuning into the
Yeah.
moments when our emotions are just
Mm-hmm.
extra heightened
Exactly.
and trying to figure out why.
Right. And one of the most effective ways to do this
Oh,
is
yeah.
through journaling.
Oh.
As you start to notice those triggers,
Mm-hmm.
write them down.
Okay.
Ascribe this situation,
Mm-hmm.
the emotions that you felt,
Yeah.
and any specific words or actions
Right.
that seem to set you off.
So we're trying to create this
Yeah.
record of these emotional hotspots
Yeah.
so we can see the patterns.
Exactly. And then as you go back and review those entries,
Mm-hmm.
you might start to notice recurring themes.
Okay.
Maybe certain tones of voice
Right.
trigger you, or specific phrases,
Yeah.
or even particular environments. The
Interesting.
key is to approach this process with a sense of curiosity
Yeah.
rather than judgment,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And one of the articles we're looking at today
Yeah.
is a really interesting anecdote
Uh-huh.
about a couple who discovered the power of this.
Yes.
The guy was constantly getting triggered by
Right.
his partner's tone of voice during disagreements,
Mm-hmm.
but he couldn't quite put his finger on why.
Oh, I remember that one.
Yeah.
It turned out that her tone of voice was very similar
Right.
to his critical mother's,
Wow.
which of course brought up all those unresolved feelings
They're
from
on-
his
yeah.
childhood.
And it wasn't until he started journaling
Right.
and reflecting on those patterns
Mm-hmm.
that he was able to make that connection.
That's such a powerful example of
Yeah.
how these triggers can operate
Mm-hmm.
below our conscious awareness.
Right.
You might not even realize the connection until we
Wow.
really start paying attention.
Okay, so let's say we've uncovered some of our triggers
Mm-hmm.
through journaling and self-reflection.
Right.
What's next?
Hmm.
How do we actually bring this awareness
Yeah.
into our relationships
Right.
without things going sideways?
Well, that's where communication strategy comes in.
Yeah.
It's about learning how to share these insights
Right.
with our partners in a way that fosters understanding and connection, rather than blame and defensiveness.
Right, because I think just dropping a bomb like,
Yeah.
hey, you totally trigger me when you do that, is
Right.
probably not the best approach.
Definitely not. The key is to approach these conversations
Yeah.
with a spirit of vulnerability and collaboration.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Mm-hmm.
How do we strike that balance?
Well, one of the most helpful techniques
Okay.
is to use I statements.
Okay.
So instead of saying, you always make me feel,
Yeah.
try phrasing it as, I feel when.
Oh, I see.
This shifts the focus from blaming your partner
Right.
to expressing your own internal experience.
So it's like owning our own emotions
Exactly.
rather than projecting them onto our partner.
Exactly.
Okay.
And it's also important to choose the right time and place
Oh, that makes sense.
for these conversations.
Yeah, probably not a good idea to unpack all of this
Right.
in the middle of an argument.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's much more effective to have these conversations
Right.
when you're both feeling calm, receptive, and open to listening.
It's like that advice about never going grocery shopping.
Yeah.
when you're hungry.
Exactly.
You're bound to make impulsive decisions.
Creating that safe and supportive space is crucial
Yeah.
for these kinds of conversations.
And something that really stood out to me
Yeah.
from the communications coach we read
Okay.
was the idea that talking about triggers can actually deepen intimacy in a relationship.
Absolutely.
Great.
When we understand each other's triggers,
Okay.
we can be more sensitive and compassionate in our interactions.
It's almost like we're giving each other a map
Exactly.
of our emotional landscape.
Yeah.
So we can navigate those tricky terrains together.
And that shared understanding can lay the foundation for greater
Yeah.
empathy, connection, and support.
I like that.
Yeah.
Makes me think about those moments when we're in the heat of an argument.
Yeah.
And suddenly we feel that surge of anger, anxiety,
Yeah.
whatever our trigger response might be.
Ah, yes. Those moments when it feels like our emotions are
Totally.
hijacking the conversation.
Yeah.
That's where the real work begins.
Okay. So how do we learn to navigate those moments?
Wow.
What can we do to prevent those triggers from completely derailing us?
Well, the first step is to recognize
Okay.
that even in those heated moments,
Uh-huh.
we have more control than we think.
Really?
The key is to interrupt that automatic reaction.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So like hitting the pause button before
Wait,
things.
it's escalate.
And one of the simplest yet most powerful ways to do this
Okay.
is to just take a breath.
Oh, okay.
It might sound cliche,
Yeah.
but that moment of conscious breathing
Right.
can create the space we need
Interesting.
to regain control.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah.
like hitting that reset button on our nervous system.
Ah, okay. So it's about creating that little bit of space between...
The stimulus and our response.
Exactly. And once we've paused
Yeah.
and taken that breath,
Yeah.
the next step is to just acknowledge our feelings to ourselves. Just say it in your head, okay, I'm feeling triggered right now.
Right. The therapist we read about talked about how
Right.
naming our emotions that way can actually help us
Yeah.
shift from reacting to responding.
Right. It's about moving from that place of emotional reactivity to a place of more
Yeah.
conscious awareness and choice.
And what if just taking a breath isn't quite enough to regain our composure?
Right.
What are some other strategies we can use?
Well, sometimes we need a bit more than just a moment
Yeah.
to collect ourselves.
Right.
In those cases, it's totally okay
Great.
to communicate that to our partner. We could say something like,
Okay.
I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed right now.
Yeah.
Can we take a break and come back to this later?
Oh, I love that. Like calling a timeout.
Yeah.
In a basketball game, when things are getting too intense,
Exactly.
everyone gets a chance to kind of regroup and come back with a clearer head.
That's a great analogy.
Thanks.
And that brings us to a really important concept.
Okay.
Trigger-proofing our relationships.
Okay.
It's about being proactive rather than reactive.
So it's almost like having a game plan
Exactly.
for those tricky moments.
Yes.
A set of tools and strategies that we can use to navigate those emotional landmines.
Exactly. And one of the couples counselors we read
Yeah.
emphasized two key elements
Okay.
in this game plan. The first is identifying coping strategies
Okay.
that work for each of us individually.
So we're talking about things like
Yeah.
taking a walk, listening to music,
Mm-hmm.
practicing deep breathing exercises.
Right.
Anything that can help us.
Yeah. Anything that helps us de-escalate
Yeah.
those big feelings.
Right. But I think it's important to go beyond just
Yes.
those standard suggestions
Absolutely.
and really personalize
Yes.
our coping strategies.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe one of us finds solace in, like
Right.
organizing something,
Right.
or a quick burst of exercise,
Right.
or spending a few minutes
Yeah.
lost in a favorite hobby.
Exactly.
The key is to find what works
Right.
and have those options, you know?
Yes. Have a toolbox.
That toolbox, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like creating a personalized
Right.
emotional first aid kit.
I love that.
And the second element of this game plan
Yeah.
is establishing safe words.
Yes. Safe words. Now, I know this might sound
Okay.
a bit unconventional.
I admit, when I first read about it, I was a
Yeah.
bit skeptical,
Right.
but the counselor's explanation actually made a lot of sense.
It does.
So tell me more about this
Yeah.
safe word concept.
Okay. So think of a safe word as a signal
Okay.
that you can use
Yeah.
when you're feeling triggered
Mm-hmm.
and you need a break from the conversation. It could be anything you and your partner agree on.
Right.
A color, a random word,
Uh-huh.
even a silly phrase.
So if things are starting to get heated and I blurt out
Yes.
rainbow,
Exactly.
and my partner knows to
Yeah.
step back and give me some space.
Exactly. It's a way to kind of de-escalate
Right.
without having to explain yourself in the heat of the moment.
And the counselor emphasized how
Yes.
having this kind of pre-agreed upon signal can actually empower both partners
Right.
to take responsibility for creating a safer emotional space.
Yeah.
It's like having a fire drill for our relationship.
Right.
We might not ever need to use it, but if a fire does break out,
Yes.
we're prepared.
We're prepared. That's a great way to put it.
Thanks.
I think it's also important to remember
Okay.
that even with the best communication skills and coping strategies,
Right.
sometimes those emotional landmines
Yeah.
are actually pointing towards a bigger issue. Something that might need a little extra help to defuse.
So when do we know
Right.
it's time to call in the experts?
Yeah.
When does navigating those emotional triggers require more than just the two of us?
Sometimes those intense reactions might actually be a sign that something deeper is going on,
Okay.
something that might benefit from professional guidance.
So it's like those triggers are kind of flashing a warning light,
Exactly.
signaling that maybe there are some unresolved issues or underlying patterns.
Yes, that need a little extra attention.
So it's not always about just managing those
Right.
surface level reactions,
Exactly.
but about addressing the root cause.
Right. And if we find that conflicts are constantly overwhelming us, or if we're struggling to make progress on our own,
Okay.
it might be time to consider
Right.
seeking professional support.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So what are some of the options out there when it comes to getting that extra support?
One of the most common
Okay.
and often most effective routes
Yeah.
is therapy or counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And this could be individual therapy
Right.
to work through our own individual triggers and patterns,
Right.
or couples therapy to address relationship dynamics
Right.
and communication patterns.
One of the therapists we read about described therapy
Yeah.
as a process of emotional excavation.
Oh, yeah. I love that.
And I love that metaphor. It's like we're carefully digging down
Right.
to uncover those buried layers
Yes.
that are influencing our present experiences.
And a skilled therapist can provide us with the tools and support
Yeah.
to navigate that process
Okay.
safely and effectively.
So it's like having a trained guide
Exactly.
to help us navigate those tricky emotional terrains.
Right. And another option is workshops
Okay.
or group programs. There are tons of workshops out there focused on
Emotional intelligence, conflict resolution,
okay.
communication skills.
And those can be super valuable for learning new techniques and connecting with other people who are going through similar challenges.
Absolutely. Plus, sometimes just hearing other people's stories can be incredibly validating.
Right.
It helps us to realize we're not alone.
It's like, oh, thank goodness.
Yes.
I'm not the only one who reacts this way.
Exactly. It normalizes those experiences, and it reminds us that there's support available.
One of the articles we read shared a really heartwarming story about a couple who had been struggling with constant arguments, emotional outbursts.
Yeah.
They decided to try couples therapy.
Okay.
And it ended up being a game changer.
Wow.
For their relationship.
I love that story. It's so inspiring to see how they were able to shift from this place of blame and resentment
to a place of understanding and empathy.
They finally had that safe space to unpack their individual triggers and learn how to support each other in a healthier way.
They learned how to communicate their needs more effectively, how to de-escalate conflicts before they spiraled out of control. But most importantly, they started to feel more connected and understood.
It's a powerful reminder that seeking professional support isn't a sign of weakness, but rather a sign of strength.
Exactly.
And commitment to growth.
Yes, both individually and as a couple.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into emotional triggers, let's recap some of those key takeaways.
Okay.
We started by exploring the nature of emotional triggers. Those moments when our reactions just feel out of proportion to the situation.
And we learned that those triggers often stem from unresolved issues or past experiences. And we explored the power of self-awareness and journaling to really uncover those patterns.
We also discussed the importance of communication.
Yes, using I statements.
Right.
Choosing the right time to talk.
Yeah.
And creating that safe space for open and honest dialogue.
And then we talked about the value of having a game plan for those heated moments.
Right.
That toolbox of coping strategies and safe words.
Yes. To signal when we need a break.
And finally, we emphasize that seeking professional support can be a game changer.
Absolutely.
When we're struggling to manage those triggers and navigate conflict on our own.
It's about recognizing that we don't have to do this alone.
Right.
There's support available. And reaching out for that support can be a powerful act of self-care and relationship care.
Here's a final thought to leave you with.
Okay.
What if, instead of viewing conflicts as battles to be won, we approach them as opportunities for deeper understanding both of ourselves and our partners?
That's such a beautiful shift in perspective.
Yeah.
It's about seeing conflicts not as threats, but as invitations to grow closer.
I like that.
To cultivate empathy. And to strengthen those connections.
It's about recognizing that those emotional triggers, while often challenging, can actually serve as signposts, guiding us towards a more fulfilling and loving relationship.
It's all about learning to navigate those tricky moments with awareness, compassion, and a whole lot of patience.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes, thanks for listening.
Into emotional triggers. Until next time, keep exploring those fascinating depths of human connection.
Yep.